Life doesn't follow a straight path. Through addiction, heartbreak, prison, and grief, we rise. From rock bottom to business success, healing, and purpose. This is the Long Way Round Show. Real stories to uplift, inspire, and remind you. The long way is worth it. Hosted by Daniel Cook. Stay tuned. We've got a powerful episode ahead.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Long Way Round Show. This morning, we've got a great guest, Trent Miles. He's created a newsletter and soon to be a blog, basically about mental health and, ways that people can, treat their mental health or different, I guess, well, you tell us a little bit about it, Trent, and exactly what you're doing. You might be able to tell a little bit more than better than I can.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so basically, I sort of say it in this kind of tagline, which is the tagline for the whole project. So it's learn about your brain, conquer your body, develop your warrior mindset. Those are the three kind of pillars of this project. That's why it's the brain and body warrior. Because I sort of think like those three elements for me are the most important things about your sort of holistic health, if you want to put it that way. Obviously, you need to understand how your brain works. There's your body, and then there's the way you think about things. And those three things are kind of the pillars.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I mean, diving into that, like your background, like did you grow up with any, neurodiversity or anything like that? Or myself, I'm ADHD and also dyslexic. That sort of sometimes can tie into the mental health space. Is that any of your story as well? Or?
So what I sort of dealt with, I mean, maybe I'd say throughout my 20s, let's say just broadly speaking, was kind of like just general anxiety and kind of this like what they call intrusive thoughts.
Yep.
A lot of ants, as Dr. Daniel Amen would say, like automatic negative thoughts, and just the way I was thinking about myself and things, and just this kind of general anxiety and sort of this intrusive thoughts about self-harm and how I could or might hurt myself. Perpetuated this for this long time.
Yep.
That's sort of what I was dealing with, yeah.
Yeah, I gotcha. And did you have much support, like from friends or family, or did you get support through online, or?
This is the interesting thing, right? I've never really spoken about this. This project is my way of talking about this for the very first time. But I think me personally, I've always been a very independent person. So I always sort of just took it upon myself to eventually work my way through this now. But this is sort of the thing that I think a lot of people are facing, right? Where they'll have these issues or they have these things, but they sort of, my friend sort of said this the other week when we were discussing this, is like, people have this like, oh, I'm just being dramatic. Or, oh, that's a silly. Or, oh, my life's not that bad. Like, there are people worse than me. So just kind of get on with it and this kind of stuff. So I think people can sort of push it aside. And this is sort of what I did for a long time until I just had this moment. I was like, no, I need to understand what I'm dealing with here and really get to the bottom of this. And that's when things changed.
Yeah, I like it. And was that, did you do any group therapy or any like counseling, psychology? What did you do?
No, I literally just started learning. And I think this is what this project is about. I think like, yes, you should absolutely go and get help if you think you need it. But ultimately, like, you can't get better unless you decide to do that. And that's what the project is for me. It's like, whatever situation you might be in, there are things you can do to get better. Just of yourself, if you're not comfortable reaching out to anyone. Now, of course, I would absolutely encourage people to reach out. I personally didn't do that, but that's just me. I'm silly like that.
Yeah, okay, beautiful. Well, it sounds like, you were able to really research and maybe read some books and different things like that. But I guess, not everyone would have the foresight or to be able to do that. So it sounds like you were quite, that was a really good journey that you went on. But yeah, so now your project is maybe, by the sounds of it, a little bit of using some of those researches and the learnings you learnt to be able to maybe give it to people in a smaller, more digestible way. Is that sort of right, or?
Absolutely, yeah, because I think what you point out there's sort of the problem, right? Where because there's so much information out there, some people are just overwhelmed by the amount of information out there. And it's sort of like, how do you condense all that so that people get the stuff that they really need? Now, whether what I research is what people really need, I don't know. This is just what I need. This is what I find interesting. But it seems like for certain people, it's starting to resonate, which is good.
Yeah, no, that's great. So is the newsletter, is it once a week or once a month or daily, or how often is it?
Oh, it's 3 days a week. So I do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So it's split into those three pillars, the brain, the body, the warrior. So each day is one of the three different ones, focusing on either the mindset, something to do with physical health of the body and nutrition, or how the brain operates.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So on a Tuesday, it would be what comes out on a Tuesday?
Well, usually I do it in the order of the brain, the body, and then the warrior is the last one. I do just mix it up occasionally if I haven't got one prepared. Sometimes I might get stuck on writing something else. Like, okay, so today, probably about half an hour ago, maybe just over half an hour ago, I released one about the warrior, like the mindset thing.
Yep.
So it sort of varies, but generally speaking, the order is brain, body, warrior, because that's the name of
Yeah, gotcha. And how do, excuse me, how are you emailing that out into like a Facebook group, or is it
It's a Substack.
sorry, I'm not sure what that is. How does that
So
work?
Substack's a social media platform specifically for writers. So it's basically a social media platform that allows you to write emails. Now, you don't have to be on Substack itself to get that. You can just subscribe with your email address, like any emailing list.
Yeah, cool.
It's the platform is Substack, which is a platform specifically for writers to share things and kind of build their audience this way.
Yeah, right. Yeah, cool. That's great. Never heard about that, but I'm not a writer, so I wouldn't
It's
know.
starting to become a real thing.
Yeah, right.
It's the next big thing, I think. I think I just joined. It seems to me, looking at the people I'm interacting with there, I sort of joined on the precipice where it's just starting to become quite a big thing.
Yeah, it sounds great. No, that's really good. And how's the email list going? Have you like got a few people interested, or is it still sort of?
Yeah, so I'm pretty close to taking over to 100 people at the moment, which is pretty exciting. I mean, most of those people are people I don't know, which is the incredibly exciting thing. I think initially, when I sort of didn't know how to use Substack as a platform, obviously I just had my friends and people in my circle, which was like maybe 15 people.
Yep.
But then once I sort of worked it out, it's sort of grown to the point where majority of the people who are on the list I actually don't personally know. They have no personal connection to me, which is obviously means that what they're reading and what they're seeing is, means something to them, which is cool.
No, that's great. That's great. And whether we're helping one person or 1,000 people or whatever, that's really good. So let's dive a little bit deeper into your sort of, I guess, spiel on the way it works and the way we can be healthy, mind, body, and is it spirit, or what's the third pillar?
Mindset, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. So what's your sort of motto, or what's your how do you have a healthy mental health? What's your program?
I mean, I'll start at the beginning. So I'll start at the beginning. What changed things for me? I think this is understanding is the key, right? Because I feel like physical health's a little bit different, but mindset and the brain and sort of psychology can be very abstract sometimes. It can be very hard to sort of nail things down. With the body, obviously, okay, if I go to the gym 3 times a week, if I run 3 times a week, if I eat healthy, I'm going to get results. But it doesn't work like that with your brain, because it's a bit more abstract. How do you control your thoughts? How do you deal with automatic negative thoughts and all this kind of stuff? So
Yep.
I sort of think like, in terms of the mental health thing, which is probably the hardest, the first thing I would say and the most important thing is this. Any negative thoughts that you have should not be ignored. Don't push them away because that makes it worse.
Mm.
Negative thoughts are not your body and your brain trying to hurt you. They're your body and your brain trying to tell you there's something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, wow.
Just because this is what I was dealing with. I was dealing with some pretty serious negative automatic thoughts, and I was just frightened by them. I was like, I just want this to go away. I hate this. But I realized, like, no, hang on. There's something here. And that's when you sort of when you start to understand why things are happening, that's when you can start to change.
Yeah, yep.
So it's that thing of you take an automatic negative thought that you always have and you sort of follow the logic. So it's like, okay, if this thought is true, what does that mean? It's called laddering. It's a cognitive behavioral therapy technique. I was watching a video about it one night when I was just thinking about all this stuff, and this is where things started to change for me. It's this logic of sort of going down the ladder. So you sort of say, okay, here's the thought on the surface. All negative thoughts come from something in your subconscious that you don't consciously comprehend. So it's like, okay, here's the thought I have that's on the surface. If that's true, what does it mean? And then go to the next level. Ask yourself the same question. If that's true, what does it mean? Go to the next level. And then eventually you'll sort of keep, if you just keep asking this question at each layer, you get down to a statement. Usually it's an I am statement. And that's when you sort of, you go, I am this. And you say, oh, okay, that's how my brain perceives me to be. Now, that may or may not be the truth, but that's how you act based on your own perception.
Yep.
In my case, the automatic thought was, I am useless. I didn't think myself capable. Now, I wouldn't consciously think that, but unconsciously, that's the way I was behaving.
Yeah, yeah, and I resonate with that. I mean, quite often in my life, I have thoughts of, you're not good enough, you're stupid, blah blah blah, all these types of things. And for me, that really comes from school and teachers and those types of things. So, would you say,
That's the insight, right? When you understand where it comes from, because sometimes you just think that's true. You don't think about, oh, where did that come from?
yeah,
That's the insight I like, right? When you said like, oh, I think that came from school, that came from this. That's the self-reflection you need to do sometimes.
yeah, gotcha. So, would you say for yourself and for the majority of people would be from a programming from their childhood, or?
Yeah, so I mean, yes, because basically the human body and the human brain are essentially built to adapt to our environment. That's just the survival thing, right? So our psychology and our biology is literally shaped by our external environment.
Yep.
So it would make sense that, yeah, I wrote about this recently, but like the way I explain is your brain is an egomaniac. Your brain makes everything about you. Now, people do something to you that has nothing to do with you, but your brain's like, well, how is this my fault?
Yeah.
So the teacher example you just talking about, right? So let's say you have a teacher who's impatient and doesn't have very good teaching skills, and they get mad at you when you don't understand something straight away. What
Yeah.
do you think? You think, oh, I'm stupid. I must not get it. There must be something wrong with me. No, that's that person's fault. That's got nothing to do with you, but your brain makes it about you.
Mm.
Where that programming comes from, right? Your brain makes everything about you when most things are not about you. That's what I
Yeah.
mean.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, whether it's through childhood or I also imagine it could be, later in life if we were in a, not so healthy relationship, whether it be a friend or a partner saying, you're not good or you're a piece of crap or I don't want to swear, but all those types of things. And then eventually we feel like that and sometimes we can act like that as well. So
Yeah, absolutely.
so you had them thoughts, like was it mainly around self-harm and things like that you were saying or?
Yes, so it's weird how these things sort of manifest sometimes. So my core, they call it a core belief in cognitive behavioral therapy, is that the thing that you believe internally that causes you to act a certain way. Now, you don't necessarily think that's true, but you act as if that is true. So mine was I'm useless, right? So I was too afraid to do and try things because I was worried that it would somehow harm myself. Now, whether that's psychologically or physically, both.
Mm.
Now, in this case, oddly enough, I just had this thought one day. I don't even remember when. I would have just had this thought one day. I picked up a knife and just like, oh, that's a bit sharp. I could hurt myself. And then this thought popped up. You're like, why would I think that? What's wrong with me? And then it just ruminates and ruminates and ruminates and just won't go away. Especially if you try to push it away, right? That's what I'm saying. If you try and push negative thoughts and go, no, I'm just going to ignore that. That shit don't work.
Mm. Yeah, that's really scary. So let's talk a little bit about your childhood. Like, did you have like sort of parents that were, really supportive and things like that, or did you go through a lot of bullying and things like that, or what do you think made you have those thoughts of, I want to harm myself or I'm useless and those types of thoughts?
Well, I think it was just the way other people treated me. Now, I don't think no one mistreated me. I'm gonna point that out right here. No one mistreated me. I think it was just the way other people treated me. Again, told before about people do things to you and you think somehow it reflects on you.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
what I think happened to me. It was just the way some people treated me that doesn't go like, oh, I mustn't be very good at this. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Or like to talk about a mindset thing, I think when I was growing up, no one, I mean, growth mindset's kind of a thing that's come out in the last sort of 10 years or whatever. When I was a kid, this didn't exist, right? It was sort of just like you're good at something you're not. So it's probably just things I tried as a kid that I just wasn't very good at. I'm like, oh, I must just be useless because other people can do this just fine. What's wrong with me?
yeah.
Like they're probably practicing and working hard and doing this, but I don't know that. I'm just like, well, I just assume I should be good at it or I'm bad at it. Like it's that dichotomy, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, I guess what I'm sort of saying is like obviously people grow up and whether they've got support or not support, they can go down many different roads and end up in many different places. But if a child has, a supporting and loving environment and, nurtured and, even through different weaknesses and shown that, you are good, you are okay, you will be accepted, blah, 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 all those types of things, you're going to start believing that. And even for myself, like my father always used to say, you can do whatever you put your mind to. And even though I had a lot of struggles and, been to prison and you know, was unemployable and rehabs and things like that. I always had this sort of thing, you know, you can do what you put your mind to. And eventually, like, I ended up getting some good jobs and you know, had some businesses and things like that. So, but I think that was through that positivity that my old man, you know, instilled in me. So some of the voices were negative and you're not good enough, you're not okay, you know, you're a piece of shit, whatever, all those types of things. But some positive input as well, which is I'm really grateful for.
I mean, but I think that's everybody, isn't it? Everyone's got a mix of that positive and negative. That's just how it goes, right?
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, I guess some people wouldn't have much positive influence, you know what I mean? Which is quite sad.
That is probably also true, but it sort of goes back to this idea of Mark Manson, where it's like I quite like this. It's like something like not everything's your fault, but everything's your responsibility. And I think it sort of goes into this, where it's like, yeah, okay, bad things can happen to you, but it's your responsibility to react to them. So even bad things, you can have a positive reaction sometimes, you know.
100%. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you're 100% right. Yeah, you can always take a negative out of a positive, and yeah. So in your research and in your, you know, the you know, different books and things you've been reading, have you come across a doctor named Dr. James, I think it's Doddy or Judy or Dr. James Doddy? He talks about manifestation, and he's a neuro surgeon or some sort of doctor, but he's into manifestation. And basically his principle is, you know, you're either manifesting good things or bad things. So if you're manifesting good things, you're, you know, actively knowing it, you're, you know, saying something positive is going to happen, I'm going to achieve, I'm going to overcome. Or people, they don't know it, but they're always saying, you know, I'm a piece of crap, I'm never going to be good enough. And it's really true. So, and this guy who talks a really lot about it from the, like the doctor world, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But have you haven't come across him at all?
No, but those ideas make perfect sense to me. I think that's very true. I think like, you know, I think it's Tony Robbins who talks about the stories you tell yourself
Yeah.
really matter, because if you tell yourself it's this weird thing of like your brain seems to have this real blind spot. So if you convince yourself I don't have the answer, your brain won't give you the answer.
Yeah.
But if you're like, I can figure this out, your brain will give you the answer. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
that classic example of like when your wife or someone in your family or whatever says, "Oh, go and get me this thing," and you're like, "I don't know where that is," and you're looking for it. I can't see it. It's not here. And they go, "There it is, right there in front of you."
Yeah.
That your brain's got this weird blind spot. Your psychologist's got this weird blind spot where if you tell yourself like it can't be done, then it can't be done. But if you sort of say like, "Well, I think I can figure this out," then you'll figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I think you're 100% right. And I mean, even with like, you know, different things that I've done, and, you know, when you're starting with very little or not much resources, you're a lot more creative than, you know, if you have a lot of resources and, you know, you're, I guess, not lazy, but you don't have to keep thinking to
Yeah.
yourself. But you know what I mean? Like sometimes, yeah, we have problems, and if you're willing to and you want to, your brain will figure it out. But it's not necessarily going to be easy, and it might take 10 years. It might, but
Oh,
we can do it.
well, I think part of that goes to the kinds of questions that you ask yourself, because this idea, I forget the exact psychological term, but this idea that if there's a question that's posed to your brain will put all the resources into giving you an answer. Now, that's something that can either kill you or you can take advantage of. If you ask yourself awful questions, like I think most people do, you get bad answers. Why am I such a piece of shit? Why can't I do this? What's wrong with me? Your brain's going to give you the answers to all those things, because that's what your brain does. It analyzes everything you've done and gives you this information. But if you ask the opposite kind of empowering questions, like, what am I missing here? Or, you know, what's one thing I can do right now that's going to make everything better, or whatever, your brain will give you the answer.
Yep. Yeah, I like it. So what's some practical things for the mental health and for those, you know, bad thoughts that you've been doing that helped you overcome it?
Well, I think again, it goes back to the understanding is the first thing. I mean, I think understand that it's not there to hurt you. It's just telling you something needs to be addressed. If you just think of it from that perspective, it changes everything, because then all of a sudden it's less uncomfortable.
Yep. So,
Yeah.
sorry, you go. No, I was going to say, so basically you get the thought, and then now through your process, you've been able to go, all right, well, that's just a thought. It's obviously telling me something. It's telling me something needs to be addressed. And then Have you? You sound like you like writing, and is like journaling and diarying and those types of things. Has that been part of your practical
A
solution?
little bit from
Better.
time to
Yep.
time, yeah. From time to time, I think so. I mean, it's sort of this is the thing, it's all connected, right? So I sort of think that upon reflection, yes, some of the problems I had were mental, psychological issues that need to be sorted through, but a lot of it was physical as well.
Okay.
Like what you eat and the way you treat your body really impacts your mind. Now, everyone goes, "Oh, duh, I know that," but like, how many people actually pay attention to that? Like, seriously pay attention to that?
Mm, mm.
You know what I mean? And like, things like vitamin D can affect your mood. Things like magnesium can affect whether your body is in a calm state or a very tense state, all these vitamins and minerals. So it's sort of this combination of all these things, hence it's the brain and body warrior, because all these things come together.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, and that makes a lot of sense. So what you're saying is not only, yeah, the journaling and the positive affirmations, but not only that, it's a healthy diet and exercise as well, and having I guess, a well balanced life for harmony. Is that sort of what you're?
Well, I sort of think that, in some cases, negative thoughts occur because people are not there's no evidence, their brain cannot see evidence that they're doing anything good. So this is why the negative thoughts occur. You're a piece of shit, you're doing this, you're doing this. But if you start to do things and you see yourself doing things that are difficult and hard and you still do them, that's when you sort of like, your brain kind of goes, oh, like, we can do that. What else can we do?
Yeah, yeah, I like it.
Or,
Yep.
you know what I mean? And again, that's an empowering question, right? I've done this. What else am I capable of?
Yeah.
That's an empowering question.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think there's a lot of ways people, build momentum, positive momentum, and whether it's through some of the stuff you're talking about, or whether it's through, the gym or whatever different avenues. But I really feel like, I was with a guest the other day, and we were talking about positive brings positive. You know what I mean? You start a little bit of traction, and then all of a sudden it's been a week and you haven't had a drink or whatever, and then oh, I've done that. I didn't think I could do that, or whatever. And you start achieving a little bit by little bit, but 12 months later or whatever, you've really come out of this dark place. And how did you get there? You're the same person you were, but sometimes it feels like it's such a big thing. But if we just take little steps and day by day, one foot in front of the other, keep moving forward, even if we have setbacks, it is achievable, but it's a process, and you got to work hard. But yeah, little momentum is a great thing.
It's like I think there's two things in what you just said there that I kind of want to talk about. The first thing is like everyone knows that, but people don't do that. And that's the problem, right? Like you could tell, and this is what a lot of self-help stuff is, I find, where it's like lessons that are pretty obvious to everyone, but most people are just not doing it. You know what I mean? Like everyone knows if you said like, oh, I'll just take it step by step, and goes, oh yeah, do I know that, but no one's doing that. You know what I mean? It's the action that matters.
Yep.
Second thing you're saying there about the setbacks, and this is the other thing, right? It's this kind of perfectionist mindset that people tend to have where it's like, well, I'm meant to be on a diet and I ate something bad today, so I'm just gonna eat like crap the rest of the day and start tomorrow. Or, I'll start again next week, or I'll start again next month, or whatever arbitrary deadline you set for yourself. Rather than just going, I made a mistake now.
Yep.
Now I'm gonna get back on the bandwagon straight away.
Mm.
The setbacks you're talking about, right? Like you don't have to treat setbacks like they're the end of the world. Yeah, okay, you mucked up a bit, but you can still keep going. There's no reason to like say, I'll put it off to tomorrow or next week or next year or whatever it is.
Yeah, gotcha. So let's talk a little bit more about your is it a blog or a newsletter or both?
Oh, it's an online newsletter at the minute. It's going to be a blog soonish, I hope, is the plan.
Yeah. So anyone who's what sort of people do you think would be your target audience?
Well, I sort of think people who were in my position, the position I was in 5 years ago, this is what I imagined, right? So
Yep.
I think that I'd sort of say it's probably for people who are starting to realize they need to do things different, but don't know where to begin.
Yep.
And they realize like I've got these thoughts and these issues, and I'm maybe not as healthy as I should be. And because like when you're in your 20s, you don't really think about that. You don't really think about health, and well, I guess maybe now's a little bit different, but like you don't think about your physical, mental health that much. You just want to kind of enjoy life. But sometimes enjoying life is too much is not a good thing. They can put you in to a bad, can put you in a bad way sometimes.
100%. Yeah, 100%.
So it's sort of, I mean, it's basically for anyone who's sort of like, I know I need to get better, but I'm not sure where to begin.
Yep, yep, yep,
That one, I
yep.
think. And
So,
for me, it's sort of like people in their 20s, early, late 20s, probably haven't maybe thought about this a whole lot, maybe haven't dived into this a whole lot. Yeah.
so let's talk about your last week's blogs, like your last Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. What were the topics? What were you talking about last week?
Boy, I'm gonna have to look. Let me have a look, actually.
Yeah, no worries.
I didn't want to talk about it, but I actually can't remember. I just released one today that was pretty heavy and full on, but we'll talk about it last week. Let's have a look. Um, oh, okay. So in terms of the body, I was talking about how to avert Alzheimer's disease. So I
Wow.
was reading Peter Thiel's book Outlive, which for anyone who hasn't read that is like the best book you can read about longevity.
Wow.
He was talking about how exercise in particular is probably the greatest tool for averting Alzheimer's disease and why that is. I was writing about that because for me, like as I wrote in this piece, like there's a few things in life that terrify me.
Mm.
Nothing, almost nothing terrifies me more than the idea of getting Alzheimer's and losing my mind. Like
Yeah.
forget that. That ain't. I've decided that's not happening to me. Like
Yep.
that's just not happening. So I wrote about that. For the warrior, it was the reason you must push yourself. So I was talking about why people need challenge and this kind of challenge contradiction. So the problem, well, the problem with us as people is there's this weird contradiction that goes right to the heart of our psychology in the sense that we don't like challenge, we don't like pushing it, we don't like to do things that are uncomfortable, but we need to do that. We
Yeah.
talked before about how our bodies and our minds are very much shaped by the external environment. So if you don't push yourself, you don't know what you're capable of, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So why challenge matters so much. And it also goes back to the negative thought thing. If you don't push yourself and if you don't challenge yourself, negative thoughts start to creep in. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I can't do that. But if you regularly push yourself and push beyond your limitations, that stuff just kind of goes away.
Yep. Yeah,
And
because I've seen stuff about that on the internet about how our body or our brain is built to survival mode or whatever. So that's why we'll eat as much as we can to blow up, or we'll lay in bed all day or whatever, or you know what I mean. So when we wake up early to go to the gym, our body says or our brain says, "No, stay in the warm bed," but you've got to somehow say, oh, "We're getting out of the bed, mate. You'll come with me," sort of thing.
I mean, I don't quite know how to put this fully into words or into an expressed idea, but what I genuinely believe is this. You and your brain are two separate entities. They're not the same thing.
Yeah, yeah,
If that's the case, it doesn't make sense to simultaneously want to do something, but you can't force yourself to do it. That doesn't make sense, right? If you were just one entity and you said, I want to get up and go to the gym in the morning, you would just get up and go. There wouldn't be this argument. Your brain and you are two separate entities. That's what I genuinely believe. Now, a lot of the stuff that in terms of like forced challenges is just that. It's putting your brain in its place saying, no, I want to do this. Here's why I want to do this. You listen to me.
mm. Yeah. Because we all know, we all have that conscious of like, we want to eat better or drinking less or
Yeah.
stopping smoking or getting up earlier or spending more time with our kids or whatever. We all get the thing, and then for whatever reason we don't do it. So you're 100% right. There's like two people at war, and it's like who's going to win?
Well, I think that this is the ultimate. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but goes to the heart of our biology and our psychology. All your brain wants to do is conserve energy. That's it. Your brain is an organ that is designed to conserve energy. If you look at everything, the way the brain operates, it's all to save energy in case of an emergency. That's it, because that's survival, right?
Yeah.
Something's going to happen in the future where we need energy to get away or fight this thing.
Mm.
That's it. That's all your brain's concerned about. Right. But then there's this other part of you that's like, but I want to be better. I want to do this. I want to do this. And I want to exercise. And I want to be better for my kids and all this kind of stuff. But it clashes with that conserve energy thing sometimes or often.
Yeah, 100%.
This is why challenging yourself matters so much, because you got to teach yourself to push beyond that. So it's easier. The more you do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess I don't know if that sort of comes from, like I don't know how many years ago, but maybe I don't know, like back when we were, hunters and gatherers and that, and now because we're in a world where, we only have to go to the fridge to get food and whatever else. But But yeah, it's an interesting topic. And so tell us, what was your third one episode for the week last week?
Last week was well, that was the warrior and the body. Why you might be an egomaniac. So what we were talking about before about how the brain makes everything about you.
Yeah. Well, I think everyone's like that, aren't we? We all think the world
Yeah, but
revolves
that's
around
what I'm
us.
saying. Literally, everyone's psychology we are wired like that. That's the quirk of our psychology is to make things about you. And I had this realization one day when I came back to Australia with my wife and we were with my mum and we were crossing the road and my wife's from a different country and my mum kind of treats her maybe like she's a bit slow because of that, which some people do. That's not,
Mm.
But she said something like, "Oh, mate, is she okay crossing the road or something like that?" Because crossing the road in Vietnam's different compared to Australia. But she's like, "Is she okay crossing the road or something?" I thought, what an odd thing to say. And I realized, like, oh, this whole time I sort of thought some of the things that you were saying to me was because I was stupid, but that's because you just treat people like they're stupid. It's actually got nothing to do with me. And that's why I had this realization, like, oh, it's kind of liberating when you realize, like, oh, other people's shit's got nothing to do with me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's an interesting thing. Like, of course she knows how to cross the road. Like she's
No, but I get where that comes from. But this is the thing. Like, I'm not blaming anyone because I understand where
ah,
that comes from because it's just looking after people. But I think sometimes, and this is where things can sometimes go awry. I think I believe everyone does everything usually with the best of intentions.
yeah,
Sometimes it's not received that way because of the way it's said or other circumstances or things just outside of people's control.
yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? So it's that weird thing where someone can do something with the best of intentions, but they can cause you harm and they don't even know it.
yeah. Yeah, I relate to that. I've with the childhood stuff and with the struggles with reading and writing. If I ever felt like someone was calling me dumb or implying that, I would really be offended. Which I think 99% of the time they probably weren't. It was just my ego or my self-esteem or
Yeah.
whatever.
It's that defensive thing, right? Because I would have the same thing in a different way where for some strange reason at the core of my psychology, I was telling myself I was useless. But if other people treated me like that, I'd get very mad and very offended and very upset. And I
Yeah,
had no idea why. I'd
yeah,
get very angry and then get out of the situation and go, why did I react like that? What happened? What just happened to me?
yeah, yeah,
Then when I worked out, I was like, oh, that's my defense mechanism kicking in. Okay.
yeah. Gotcha. So and what was the most recent one you were
Oh boy. Okay. Well, this one was all about death, so that's lovely. So the one I just put out today was you might know this living in Australia, but 2 or 3 weeks ago, Robert Walls passed away, the ex-footballer. He's an Australian football legend. He passed away a couple of weeks ago.
AFL or
AFL, yeah.
oh, yeah, cool. I'm in
Um,
a big country. We don't.
okay, there you go. Then you don't. Anyway, Robert Walls was an AFL legend. He passed away a couple of weeks ago. He was like 75. So what he decided to do was he'd battled cancer. He'd survived that, but it had come back.
Oh no.
And he sort of said, like, I don't want to go through that again, so I'm just going to end my own life. So he voluntarily did the voluntary dying thing.
Wow. I don't
Reading
even.
an article about it, and his son was sort of describing what had happened on the day when he decided to, when his life was over.
Mm,
And, you think it'd be very morbid, but everyone was happy and upbeat, and he was in good spirits, and he like skipped down the hallway to his death or something. I
wow.
remember reading, I was like, damn. And then I just had this moment where this question popped into my head. It's like, what, how would I have to live my life to be able to skip to my death at the end? Or something like that.
Wow. That's a
And that
very.
real hit me real hard. And I was like, I gotta write about that shit because if that hits me real hard, it's gonna mean something to other people, hopefully as well. It's like, damn, like what would you have to do in life to get to the end and be just like, yep, I'm happy and let's go.
That's a very interesting topic, and yeah, I think
Hey,
you're right.
death frightens the shit out of me. So like this idea that someone could just be like, yeah, no, I'm good and just like skip down the hall and to the end of their life. I'm just like, wow, like what kind of life would you have to live to do that? But I think that's a mindset shift, right? This goes to the mindset thing we're talking about.
Yeah, right. No, well, I mean, I don't know if he's written any articles about it, but it would be very interesting. What to sort of explore that. I mean, obviously, he was not super old, but old enough where I guess his kids were probably grown up and things like
Yeah.
that, and had a great career and probably a
Yeah.
good life. And yeah, but I didn't even know it was a thing in Australia to be doing that sort of stuff. But But yeah, we better not talk too much about that. I don't know if that's like a century issue or anything in Australia or anything like that. But yeah, that's a very interesting topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you lived in is it Vietnam for 7 years?
I lived in Vietnam. So I lived in China for a year and Vietnam for 7 years, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
right. And was China first or Vietnam first?
Yeah,
Or?
China first. So what happened was me and my best friend used to like traveling a lot and we traveled a lot together.
Yeah.
And we went to Cambodia for about a month to volunteer in 2013. And we went to Myanmar, which was a completely different experience. And we did stuff like that. And then we were sort of talking when we got back to Australia. He's like, oh man, I want to do more of that traveling stuff. And he's talking to me about it, explaining. He goes, oh, and I was thinking I could teach English in China and blah, 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 because then I can make money to travel and da, da, da. I sort of said, wait, stop. He goes, what? I said, let's do that. He goes, do what? I said, you just said they're teaching English in China thing. Let's do that. He's like, oh, I wasn't asking you to do that with me. I was just sort of spitting
Yeah.
out, sure,
Yeah.
let's do that. And
Yeah.
we sort of just agreed we did that. And yeah, we went and did that for, well, about 9 months in the end. And then I moved to Vietnam for about 7 years.
What was before we move on to the Vietnam, what was the voluntary work you were doing when you were in your first bit of your travels?
Cambodia. So we were doing time in an orphanage.
Wow, that
Yeah.
that would have been cool. Was that something that you just picked a project, or was that something that was really close to your heart, or how did you
So what happened there was the very first time I left Australia. I don't know if I guess some people will be familiar with this country, but a country called East Timor. Are you familiar with this place?
Oh yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just north of Australia, about an hour away from Darwin. It's a very small, independent island country.
Near
Um,
Papua New Guinea, isn't it? Sort of thing.
the first time I traveled, this is where I went, but I went there as part of a Rotary expedition.
Ah, yeah,
I guess you
cool.
could say to volunteer in an orphanage and do this work and meet all these kids and sort of do this. And I sort of love that. I was like, well, I'd like to do that, but do it somewhere else. So then the next time I was like, well, I'll do that in Cambodia as well. So
Yeah, wow, that would have been cool. So what were you just like doing like maintenance and painting and like just work around the village or what sort of
Timor one, yeah. So we were sort of doing work around the orphanage, work that needed to be done. They did some construction work out about an hour outside the city on one of the other sites they had on the farm. We were building stuff and put stuff up for them and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, spending
oh,
time
that would have been great. So you moved to Vietnam and you were there for 7 years. What were you doing? What were you doing over there? Were you
uh,
teaching English the whole
yeah,
time?
teaching English,
Yeah.
which is like what 95% of Western slash foreign people would do when they go to Vietnam. That's sort of the only job option really, unless you run your own business or something.
Yeah, right. And was that like is that sort of like in a TAFE or in a school or how did that sort of go about?
Well, so there's a few different options. So they do it a lot of different ways. So it can be they do it at universities. I didn't do university, but you can do it at universities. They can do it at private schools that are like after school programs.
Yeah,
Uh,
cool.
you can do it at primary schools, at high schools. They do that as well, or even kindergartens. They do also do that too.
Wow.
Most they did the private after school kind of stuff.
Yeah, cool. And was that enough money to like fully survive or did you have like other jobs as well or
Well, yeah, I mean that's the money they pay for foreign English teachers there is quite high, especially compared to the sort of local salary. So yeah, that's enough to definitely live pretty comfortably.
yeah, because I can imagine the cost of living would be pretty low over there, sort of thing.
Yeah, well, minus the real estate in Richmond City, which is just ridiculously expensive like everywhere else in the world. But yeah, everything else is pretty cheap.
Oh, okay, cool. So what would like I'm not saying the exact number, but what sort of salary would you get over there? Would it be like a monthly thing or
Yeah, so usually they pay by month in Vietnam. I don't know, I was getting like 500,000 K an hour, which is the local currency, which is like, I don't know, 30-ish dollars Australian, maybe. I don't know the calculation now.
yeah, gotcha, cool. And what would it be like 2 or 3 hours a day sort of thing or
Yeah, generally, so if it's the after school stuff, it'd be like night times and then weekends, basically. So you might work all day weekend, but then weeknights you just do like 6 to 9 o'clock or 5 to 8 or whatever it is. At the back end, I was working at a place called CT. I still work for them now, actually. Every Sunday night, I do a live stream on TikTok for them because I loved working there. It's the best job I ever had. They're fantastic. But I only teach adult students, but it's an after center thing for like office workers, after hours for like office workers and university students who want to improve English.
yeah, cool.
After
And
the back end when I was there, yeah.
oh, that sounds really interesting. And were you living like a little bit out of the city, or were you living sort of right in town, like in the most popular bit, or?
No, so I guess the suburbs in
Mm.
Ho Chi Minh City was where I was living mostly. I mean, I sort of moved around a bit there. So I lived in Ho Chi Minh City probably 80% of the time I was living there, but I also spent 1 year living on the beach. And
Wow.
then COVID times, which was about 9 months when everything was closed down. I actually lived with my wife's family in the village in Vietnam.
Oh yeah,
That
cool.
was interesting.
Yeah, right. And what would it be like? Say you were living like an hour outside of the city in a place like that. What would it be for rent? Like, would it be like ballpark figure, just roughly?
Uh, in Ho Chi Minh City. Well, I mean, it's a little bit different. So in Ho Chi Minh City, you can actually just rent like tiny little rooms. They don't have the same regulations as say we'd have in Australia. So you could literally just rent like a tiny little room. It's just like one room with a bathroom for like a 3 million a month, which is like, I don't know, maybe $200.
Wow, like
But then if
that
you
in
rent the
US?
whole place, it could be just as expensive as anywhere else. So, I mean, I was lucky in the sense that the back end of my time when I was there, the house that I was renting belonged to a friend of mine.
Yeah, okay.
Off him, which made it easy. It was like 8.5 million a month, which is I wouldn't know what the calculation is. That's a couple $100 basically.
Wow, so that's pretty
500 bucks.
cheap compared to Australia.
Yeah, compared to Australia, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, everything's gone crazy here in the last sort of
Oh yeah.
around 5 years or whatever. But yeah, righto, that's really cool. And you met your wife there. How long into the stay was it when you sort of met your wife?
About 6 weeks.
Oh, cool. So you sort of met her pretty quick.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Pretty quickly.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And you guys are back in Australia now. How long you been back home?
Uh, Almost 2 years.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And you're still working a bit with the school over there. Are you doing any other work as well, or are
Just
you mainly just doing the letter and the email
I've
and the
just been doing the writing because the English teaching industry in Australia has crapped its pants in the last year, basically. So I
Mm.
was working as an ESL teacher here until about December last year, but then just there's just not enough students and they're making visas harder and all this kind of stuff. So I had this kind of boom of students just after COVID when they wanted to encourage people to come here. So, there's all these people from South America and some parts of Europe and Asia as well, but a lot of South American people came to Australia to work and to study English and this kind of thing. And in the last sort of year and a bit, they've made that much more difficult. So student numbers are well down, and a lot of schools here just closed down, and it's just still no good at the moment. So
Yeah, right. That's
it's
no.
sort of over for me, unfortunately.
Yeah, gotcha, gotcha. Well, I'm sure if you go traveling again, it's always a skill that you've always got. So that's pretty cool. Well, let's wrap it up. Let's just talk a little bit more. If there's any other closing thoughts or closing, anything you'd like to say about your, blog and newsletter before we go, and we'll sign off in a minute.
I think we've covered everything pretty well, to be honest. I just wanted to kind of give people an idea of what it was, and I'm sort of trying to reach out to more people because the idea is the more people that see it, the more people I might be able to sort of assist with. And
Yeah.
as part of this, I'm also looking to do sort of speaking. So if there's anyone out there who would like to have me come and speak at, local community event or whatever, like in Melbourne, I'm more than happy to do that because that's also part of it. Do want to get out there and do the speaking stuff because with the teaching background, I'm pretty comfortable talking in front of people and doing all that kind of stuff. So that's also part of it too.
Yeah, no, that sounds really great, Trent. I'll definitely join the email list for sure, and I'll add all the details to the bottom of our
Yep, yep.
description. And yeah, if anyone's looking for, someone in Melbourne to any speaking events or anything like that, Trent's your man. He's got a lot of knowledge about this stuff, and yeah, I'm sure you'll be able to help a lot of people, Trent. It's been really a pleasure and an honor to talk with you this morning.
Thanks.
We'll sign off, and thanks everyone for watching. Have a great day. See you
Yeah.
guys. Bye.